"You're nothing," Richard Blackwell hissed as security guards gripped my arms, my personal belongings already boxed and waiting by the elevator. "You'll never work in this industry again. I'll make sure of it. Every door will close. Every contact will forget your name. You're finished." 5 years later, I walked through the same glass doors of Blackwell Industries, past the same marble reception desk, wearing a $4,000 Armani suit and carrying documents that would destroy everything he'd built. But why was the receptionist trembling as she announced into her headset, "She's here"? "Yes, the Ms. Crane. The entire staff is assembled as requested." I smiled and straightened my blazer. "Which conference room?" "The main boardroom, ma'am. Top floor. Mr. Blackwell is. He's in the front row." I'd waited 5 years for this moment. Planned for it. Sacrificed for it. And now, finally, I was going to look Richard Blackwell in the eyes and watch him realize that the woman he'd called nothing was about to become everything he feared. "Perfect," I said. "Let's not keep them waiting." I was 26 when Richard Blackwell destroyed my life. Fresh out of my MBA program at Wharton, I'd joined Blackwell Industries as a junior analyst in their mergers and acquisitions division. It was a dream job, one of the most prestigious positions in corporate finance, the kind of role that launched careers into the stratosphere. I was good at it. Better than good. Within 2 years, I'd been promoted twice, led 3 successful acquisition analyses, and earned a reputation as someone who could see patterns others missed. I found the hidden value in struggling companies, identified the poison pills in seemingly attractive deals, and saved Blackwell Industries millions in what would have been disastrous purchases. Richard noticed. He started inviting me to executive meetings, asking my opinion on strategy, treating me like a protege he was grooming for greatness. Then he asked for something else. It happened at a company retreat in Aspen. He'd requested a private meeting to discuss my career trajectory. I arrived expecting mentorship. Instead, I found a hotel room, a bottle of champagne, and a man who believed his power entitled him to anything he wanted. "You're smart, Vivian," he'd said, his hand on my knee. "But smart only gets you so far. The real opportunities go to people who understand how relationships work." I removed his hand. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding. I'm offering you a partnership. Everything you've wanted: corner office, executive title, 7 figures. All yours. You just have to be flexible." "And if I'm not flexible?" His smile turned cold. "Then maybe I've overestimated your intelligence." I walked out of that hotel room and flew home that same night. 3 weeks later, I was fired. The official reason was performance concerns. Laughable, given my track record. The real reason was sitting in Richard's corner office, watching security escort me out, confident that his power would erase me from existence. He was almost right. The blacklisting was systematic and ruthless. Every company I applied to suddenly had concerns about my professional conduct. References who'd praised me for years claimed they couldn't remember my work. Recruiters who'd courted me went silent mid-conversation, their enthusiasm evaporating after quick phone calls they thought I didn't notice. Richard hadn't just fired me. He'd salted the earth. I spent 6 months unemployed, burning through my savings, sending out hundreds of applications that disappeared into silence. My apartment shrunk from a 1-bedroom in Manhattan to a studio in Queens to a room in a shared house in Jersey City. I ate ramen for every meal and cried myself to sleep wondering if Richard had been right, if I really was nothing. Then I got angry. Not the hot, explosive anger that burns out quickly. The cold kind. The kind that crystallizes into diamond-hard determination and doesn't fade no matter how long it takes. If the industry was closed to me, I'd build my own door. I started Crane Capital with $12,000, the last of my savings plus a small loan from my grandmother, who'd believed in me when no one else did. The premise was simple: find undervalued companies, acquire them cheaply, restructure them intelligently, and sell them for profit. Basic private equity, nothing revolutionary. What made us different was our approach. Most private equity firms treated acquisitions like strip mining operations. Buy the company, fire everyone, sell off assets, extract maximum value with minimum regard for the humans involved. I'd seen enough of that at Blackwell Industries to know it wasn't the only way. Crane Capital rebuilt companies. We kept workers employed while improving efficiency. We invested in training and technology. We treated acquisitions like rescue operations rather than pillaging expeditions. The first year, I acquired one company, a failing manufacturing firm in Ohio that everyone else had written off. We restructured their operations, renegotiated their supplier contracts, and invested in automation that made their workforce more productive rather than obsolete. 18 months later, we sold them for triple our purchase price. The second year, we did 3 deals. The third year, 12. By year 5, Crane Capital managed $2.3 billion in assets. We'd completed 47 successful acquisitions. Forbes had profiled me twice. I'd been invited to speak at Davos. And through it all, I'd been watching Blackwell Industries. Richard had made mistakes. Without my analyses catching his bad decisions, he'd approved a series of disastrous acquisitions that drained the company's cash reserves. He'd expanded into markets he didn't understand, hired executives who told him what he wanted to hear, and alienated the institutional investors who'd been his base of support. By year 4, Blackwell Industries stock had dropped 40%. Shareholders were restless. The board was asking questions Richard couldn't answer. I started buying shares through subsidiary companies, quietly accumulating a position that would have triggered disclosure requirements if it had been concentrated. By the time anyone noticed, Crane Capital and its affiliates controlled 23% of Blackwell Industries, more than any other single entity, including Richard himself. The hostile takeover began on a Tuesday morning. Our tender offer was generous, 15% above market price, enough to tempt shareholders who'd watched their investments crater under Richard's leadership. We promised stability, strategic restructuring, and a return to the fundamentals that had made Blackwell Industries successful in the first place. Richard fought it, of course. He deployed every defense mechanism in the corporate playbook: poison pills, white knight searches, emergency board meetings, lawsuits claiming our offer undervalued the company. None of it worked. The shareholders had lost faith. The board had lost patience. And Richard had lost control. 6 weeks after we launched the tender offer, Crane Capital owned 51% of Blackwell Industries. The acquisition was complete. Now I just had to deliver the news personally. The boardroom was silent when I entered. 300 employees filled the space. Everyone from senior executives to mailroom clerks assembled at my request for what the memo had called a transition announcement. They stood in nervous clusters, whispering speculations about layoffs and restructuring and all the usual corporate apocalypse scenarios. Richard Blackwell sat in the front row, flanked by his executive team. He looked older than I remembered, grayer, diminished somehow. 5 years of bad decisions had carved lines into his face that hadn't been there when he'd told me I was nothing. He didn't recognize me at first. I'd changed since the day security had escorted me out. The desperate, defeated woman he'd fired had been replaced by someone harder, sharper, armored in success, and the kind of confidence that only comes from building something out of ruins. I walked to the front of the room and stood behind the podium that still bore the Blackwell Industries logo. My logo now, technically. Good morning. For those who don't know me, my name is Vivian Crane. I'm the CEO of Crane Capital, and as of 9 o'clock this morning, the majority shareholder of this company. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Richard had gone very still. I'm sure you have questions. Let me address the most important one first. I am not here to destroy what you've built. Crane Capital's philosophy has always been to invest in companies, not strip them. Most of you will keep your jobs. Some of you will be promoted. The restructuring will be surgical, not wholesale. Relief flickered across faces throughout the room. However, I paused, letting the word hang. There will be changes in leadership. Effective immediately, Richard Blackwell is removed as CEO. His executive authority is terminated. Security will escort him to collect his personal belongings within the hour. The room erupted. Richard shot to his feet. You can't do this. This is my company. I built this from nothing. Actually, Mr. Blackwell, I can do this. I own 51% of the shares. And as for building this from nothing, I smiled. I know something about that. Recognition finally dawned on his face. The color drained away, leaving him pale and shaking. Vivian? Vivian from? From 5 years ago. Yes. I stepped out from behind the podium and walked toward him, my heels clicking against the marble floor. You probably don't remember what you said to me that day. Men like you say so many cruel things to so many people that it all blurs together. But I remember. Every word. I stopped directly in front of him, close enough to see the fear in his eyes. You said I was nothing. You said I'd never work in this industry again. You said every door would close. Vivian, I was angry, You'd rejected me. I didn't mean. You meant every word. And you spent years making sure it came true. Do you know how many companies told me I had red flags in my background? How many recruiters stopped returning my calls after someone warned them about me? I was protecting the company. You were punishing me for not sleeping with you. Let's be honest, Richard. Just this once. The room had gone absolutely silent. 300 people were watching Richard Blackwell's entire career collapse in real time. I could have done the same thing to you, I continued. I could have blacklisted you, spread rumors, made sure no one in the industry would touch you. That's what you would have done, isn't it? He didn't answer. But I'm not you. I don't need to destroy your reputation. You've done that yourself, with 5 years of terrible decisions and arrogant leadership. I just needed to wait. I turned back to address the room. Richard Blackwell will receive a standard severance package. Not because he deserves it, but because Crane Capital honors its commitments, even to people who've never honored theirs. He will not be given a reference. He will not be permitted to contact any employee of this company. His security clearance will be revoked immediately. I looked back at Richard one more time. You have 45 minutes to collect your personal belongings. After that, you'll be escorted from the building. The same way I was 5 years ago. He didn't go quietly. You can't do this to me, Richard shouted as security approached him. I have connections. I have lawyers. This isn't over. Actually, it is. Your lawyers have been informed of the transition. Your connections have been selling their shares to me for months. And your board, your hand-picked loyal board, voted unanimously to approve the acquisition. I tilted my head. It turns out people will do almost anything to avoid going down with a sinking ship. Even your allies. Richard's face contorted with rage. You think you've won? You think this makes you somebody? You're still the same desperate little girl who couldn't cut it. I'm the woman who bought your company for $1.2 billion while you weren't paying attention. I'm the woman who turned your failure into my opportunity. And I'm the woman who's going to spend the next 5 years proving that everything you built could have been built better, smarter, more humanely. I leaned closer, dropping my voice so only he could hear. You were right about one thing, Richard. Smart only gets you so far. But you forgot something important. I straightened up. Patience gets you the rest of the way. Security led him toward the door. He looked back once, his expression a mixture of disbelief and something that might have been respect, if he'd been capable of it. I turned back to the assembled employees. I know this has been a lot to process. There will be individual meetings over the next week to discuss roles, compensation, and the future of this company. For now, I want you to know that Crane Capital rewards performance, not politics. If you're good at your job, you'll be recognized for it. If you have ideas for improvement, you'll be heard. And if anyone creates a hostile environment for their colleagues, they will be removed. Immediately. I paused, letting that sink in. This company has potential. That's why I bought it. Not for revenge, not for ego, but because I believe in what it could become with the right leadership. I hope you'll give me the chance to prove that. I walked out of the boardroom to stunned silence, then scattered applause, then something that sounded almost like hope. 3 years later, Blackwell Industries, renamed Crane Industries, had tripled its stock price. We'd divested from the unprofitable ventures Richard had championed, invested in emerging technologies, and built a corporate culture that valued competence over connection. Employee satisfaction scores were the highest in our sector. Our retention rate was the envy of the industry. And every year, I funded a scholarship for women in business who'd faced setbacks, professional betrayal, industry blacklisting, the 1,000 obstacles that ambitious women encounter in corporate America. I called it the Nothing to Something Fund. Richard would have hated the name. That was part of why I chose it. My grandmother came to the opening of our new headquarters, the same building where I'd been escorted out by security a lifetime ago. She stood in the lobby, looking up at the Crane Industries logo, tears streaming down her face. You did it, baby, she said. You showed them all. I showed myself, I corrected. That's what mattered. She hugged me, this tiny woman who'd believed in me when I had nothing but anger and a $12,000 loan. Your grandfather would be so proud. He always said the Crane women were built different. I thought about Richard Blackwell. Last I'd heard, he was consulting for a small firm in Ohio, a fraction of the power he'd once wielded, and felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just peace. We are built different, I agreed. We're built to last. He called me nothing because I wouldn't give him everything. He tried to erase me because my existence was an inconvenience. But you can't erase someone who refuses to disappear. You can only delay their arrival. And when they finally show up at your door, they're not the desperate victim you remember. They're the force that ends you.